All right, 3, 2, 1. We are live.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our Christmas. Didn't even get all of our wreaths up. Welcome to our
that
Christmas.
One is dead.
Yeah. Well, it's been around. This is our Saturday night YouTube Live Purple Heart Project fundraiser. Ask me questions, I'll give you answers. Lots of people here tonight, but let's start right in with a question. And then as the audience builds, we got a lot of stuff. We'll tell you about Frick. We'll introduce you to a latest family member and lots of other stuff. Frick, question please.
All right, first question comes from David in Boonville, Arkansas.
David in
Boonville.
Boonville. I hope you ducked the tornadoes.
He says, what corner joint would be the strongest for a blanket chest?
What corner joint would be the strongest for a blanket chest? Well, of course, I would dovetail it. If you didn't want to dovetail it, you could do a box joint. Both of those are equally strong. There's lots of glue surface. Yeah, I would. I mean, I just. What do you think, Nick? I think that's the option I would go with. But then, I got to change my whole line of thinking. Remember, where's that, Jake?
I don't know.
We did a little experiment here a couple of months ago to see how strong a...
Did you find it the other day?
Yeah, a simple butt joint. Yep. That's it right there.
Okay.
So here I have to, this is an answer I never thought I would give. So here's a rabbet joint. So in case you don't know.
Rabbet or rebate.
Rebate, depending on which side of the world you're in. So on this piece, I've cut this out. And on the other piece, I didn't do anything. I did plane the end of the board beforehand. And then I glued it. You can see a little bit of glue left over in there. Very simple joint. And look how strong it is. That's a slippery floor. And after that meal I just had, I'm probably close to 200 pounds with this apron on. And I was actually jumping on that, and I couldn't break it. So that really destroys the line of thinking we've always had about the strength of a joint. So you could, if you wanted something to be really simple, you could do that. If you wanted it to be complicated but strong, you could do a dovetail. I think in terms of the one I just showed you, I think hand planing the surface so that it's you have really good close contact, meaning when that piece goes into the corner, there's contact everywhere. You don't have any gaps. And I don't know whether you get actually a better joint from a hand plane surface than you would one coming off the table saw or not. I think you would. We'll have to prove that someday. That'd be a good test. So that's my response.
Some people are saying they're disappointed about the drill bit being...
Oh, well, all right. Well, I was going to wait till our audience builds a little bit, and then we'll answer it, and then we don't have to answer it a whole bunch of times. So, Ken, please remind me to address that. Next, Frick.
All right.
How many people do we have on?
369.
Okay, when we get up over 500, let's introduce the moose.
All right, next one comes from Germany, from George.
Hi, George. You're up late.
How do you prevent or deal with squeeze out on the inside corners when gluing a box together?
Well, it's almost inevitable because if you're too stingy with the glue, there's a chance you're not going to have enough. If you're overly generous, then it's going to be all over the place. So a little fine bunch of beads is probably perfect. I find it best to scrape them off at the point where the glue has got rubberized, not fully cured. If it's fully cured, then it's a lot harder because you got to put a lot of effort in, and there's a chance that you're going to erase some of the grain when you do it. If you do it too soon, it just smears all over, and then that's a mess. So I keep a blade. I have a plain blade, a block plane blade, that does not have the Charlesworth ruler trick on the back. So what I do, especially in that situation where the glue is actually I'll use that as an example. This is a little bit late. This stuff is already hard. But when the glue has gotten just rubbery enough that it's, once you release it and it lands there, it's not going to leave a spot. But you can lay something like this, and you can just go in there and you can drag that along that corner, like so. Or if it's really hard, you can just tap it into the corner and then flip it over and do the same thing on this side. That's hard. I can't even cut through it, but that's how I would do it. But do it when it's soft and it's easier to do. But have something like that laying around so that you can get right in the corner. Or you can always buy an IBC chisel, because the advantage of an IBC chisel, you can take the handle off, you can take the ferrule off, and that'll do the same thing. That'll lay right into that corner. I'm going to just, I'm going to try something with a little brass hammer. Now, if I didn't want to mark up the wood, I could put a piece of paper, got a credit card or something. And flip it over. And if the back is nice and flat, it's not going to dig into the wood. And you should be able to get right in there and just release that without a problem. But I think you end up having to have a little bit. I've tried running masking tape right on the inside corner. I wouldn't say it was a tremendous success. Okay, next.
All right, David in Devon, UK.
David in Devon. Hey, David.
He says, do you ever do dovetails with mitered ends on boxes and cabinets? If so, do you have any tips for getting the miters spot on?
Ooh. So what he's referring to, have I got an example here, Jake?
I'm trying to think of where you used that. Oh, it was on that bookcase that you built in the hand tool workshop.
Yeah.
Super Dave said, to tell everyone I'm on my way, just putting the last few rubber safety tips on my chisels.
I'm looking to see if I have an example. I thought maybe I did, but I don't. But what David's asking, so this box is dovetailed. And on the front edge, leading edge, you see a butt joint. So if you do what he says, if you look over here, this being the pin would have been cut on a 45 like that. And this tail, you wouldn't see this part of it, because it would be cut sloped like that on the inside, but this would go all the way to the front. And you would have cut a miter along here, and you put your two miters together. Or you put the joint together and the miter closes. It's a bit of a tricky joint, because the miter has to close at the same time the tails seat down into the pins. And if the miter closes first, then you get a gap at the base of all your tails. If the miter doesn't, if the pins close, the tails close first, you have a gap. So how do you do it? Well, what I always would do is use my magnifiers and make sure that on that, I'm looking for some way to actually show you. I want to demonstrate this, because I think this is a good question. Let me just see if I can find a piece of wood in a shop.
How thick?
Oh, a piece of 3/4. Here's something right here. Okay, can I make? No, I don't want to make a saw cut and make a mess. So I got to move some of this. I got all these boxes around just in case you wanted to be inspired. Lovely hinge. You've probably seen that 100 times. Okay, I'm going to lay out. I'm going to make this cut. I'm going to lay out the tail portion, because the pin portion is pretty straightforward. The tail portion can be a little bit complicated. You slept right through that? Did you want to peek? Did you want to do a little peek?
She's not leaving.
Gotta use the inside
A
one.
little heavy.
Huh? Oh. Almost can't use that. It's got that crap all the way around it. Oh. Let me just cut this real quick. I didn't want to turn the saw on when the baby was in here. Okay. So the first secret to doing this is you have to get your you have to set your marking gauge to the exact thickness. And obviously both pieces need to be the exact thickness. So if this was my tailboard, I'm going to identify it as such. How come half the time I have 9 pens?
That's a Sharpie pen.
So
You want red?
no. There's one right here. This is going to be the tailboard. So on the tailboard, we're going to run a line on the inside, on the outside. Now, I'm going to say this is the back, so I'm going to go ahead and do the back as a normal way. But if this is the front edge, and I'm going to put front on here, I would not use my marking gauge across here. Okay? Now, I'm just going to do this one end. But we'll go ahead and lay this out. We'd have this line, and I'll come down here and do that, do that. Do that. Have you done one of these before? Nick, you did it in the class, didn't you? You're not paying attention, Nick? Come on. You didn't?
No, we didn't have one.
Okay. Ignore the rest of it because I haven't gone all the way down. Now I'm going to turn that around. Let me just do it and then I'll show it to you. So here's how I would lay it out. This is the front of my board. Here's my dovetail. You notice that I did not draw the line down here. And I'm going to identify all of my waste. But I drew my line down in here. So this is all going to be waste. This is going to be waste. Then I've got to take my combination square. There's an elephant in the room, by the way. I shouldn't have used that expression, but that will be unveiled due to us breaking a record in donations a few months ago. We were given permission to unveil this beauty. Stay tuned, you do not want to miss it. Okay, so this is the part where you got to get really precise. I put my headgear on so I can see better. And I'm going to use my combination square and a striking knife. And I've got to run from, this is the outside, so I'm going to run from here out to there. But I don't know if Jake can get in that tight or not.
Not with
This
the cover.
way, this way, what?
Wait.
So, can you see right there, the knife mark, or the marking gauge mark? So I'm going to go back here. So the marking gauge mark looks like this when expanded. It's angled on the waste side, it's square on the good side. And I've got to now draw 45. Well, I got to make sure that I draw my 45 not from there, but from right here. It has to originate right there. So that's why I got to use my magnifiers to get in. And when that point, right there, and then with a knife that's flat on the inside, and I'll run it several times. Okay, and if you want to make it easier, take your chisel. I'm going to go ahead and finish identifying the waist. Okay, let's have a look at this before I do anything. So one more time, this is the outside. The hash marks are all going to be removed. You don't see anything out here, but you do see this. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to use my chisel, and I'm going to just carefully cut a little trough up against that knife line, okay? And I'd go ahead and I'd process this as normal. I think I'll use my new Len Robichaud 3/4 dovetail saw for small work.
This isn't small.
Well, it was the only chance I could throw it in. Excuse me. This has a 15-thou blade, by the way. So, and sometime in the very near distance is going to be the new Sean shim, specifically for this saw. That's the, there's the original Sean shim, and that's the new one for the 3/4. So I'm going to make these cuts. I want to give a big shout out to Mark at the Wood Whisperer. He did me a big favor the other day and came online with some vets that we're working with, who I will talk a lot more about later tonight. So if you haven't been to the Wood Whisperer, go visit, subscribe. He's a good guy. Mark made a new bench recently, and he took his old bench and he auctioned it off, and he gave all of the proceeds to the Purple Heart Project, which I thought was awesome.
Ooh, remember your bench isn't level.
Huh?
Your bench isn't level.
Oh, yeah. You mean so I don't screw up again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this one, I have to make the cut from that corner down to here. Very similar to doing a half blind. So I'm going to get started on the inside, line my saw up.
We're at 550 now, just so you know.
Are we? Now this is part that's a little bit difficult because you don't want to
You're really
go
close to that tip.
You don't want to go beyond on that line, and yet you got to get down to this inside one.
You went over.
Did I? Yeah. I didn't think so. I'll go ahead and remove the waist. Turn this back around. Instead of chiseling this, I'm just going to try to get really close with the saw. And by the way, the fret saw fits in the kerf left by the new 3/4 saw too, so you're safe. Okay, so now what I've got to do is I've got to come in and I have to saw down here. So I'm going to switch and I'm going to grab my joinery crosscut. You could do either, but I'm going to use the crosscut. I like the way it holds the line. And we're going to go in here. That little trough that we created allows, I'm going to make it a little deeper. It allows for a nice wall that you can register your saw against. Now, the whole idea is to do this so you don't have to use a second tool. And by that I mean, be accurate enough with your saw that you can join right from it. So I'm going from, I'm down about 3/16 here and then a little bit lower on the inside. So you got to make a plumb cut at the same time you're following your line. That wall, sorry. Give me a heads up, Jake. Light touch. There. Now, I would come in here and look at that really closely. And I think, based on where that line is, that I was sloped a little bit. So I've got to come in here and correct that now. Oh, I did. I could see it. Sorry for the long answer, but I was trying to be thorough.
Well, the next question was how do you lay out and cut the dovetails? So
For this?
yeah.
Okay. So there's the dovetail half. Now the good news is the pin half is really simple. You just process out like a normal pin. Do it, and then when you're done, you come in and you just cut a 45. You cut the pin off. Well, here, let's do that on the other end. We'll just kind of pretend.
Now, what
here.
about transferring? You have to use a knife?
How you would transfer it? Yeah. Yeah, you got to use a knife. Oh yeah, you can't use the shunshim and
offset.
the offset process to do these, because I haven't figured out a way to be able to.
You can't reach in.
You can't reach up in there with your sawtooth blade, so you got to go in with a really fine knife and draw a line, and then you've got to learn to follow that line. But I'm just going to. What am I doing, Jake? This
That way.
I'll just cut this real fast, and like I say, we'll just have a pretend one. So there would be your pin, and then you would do the same thing you did. And when I say same thing, what I mean is you would come in here and you would register right there, not at the bottom of the mark. Come in, keep that knife standing plumb so that that little knife wall you're going to get, thank you, Paul, is 90 degrees to this surface, right? You don't want it sloping off, or nor do you want it sloping under. Then you would come in with your, I'll do it with this, with a little 3/4 saw. Just follow that wall. And this one, like I said, this one's all done after the fact. So that's what your pin board would look like. Your pins would all be the normal. You just take a 45 off that last one. And then if you kept this distance from here to here, the exact thickness of the board, and you went right off of that inside line, well, when this tail comes down and meets that gauge line, then the inside of this miter and the inside of the opposite miter should be meeting at the same time. So everything should work out just right. But it's, boy, it's a nerve-wracking one. You're putting it together and you swear that the gap on underneath the tails is bigger than the gap in the miter, and you tap, 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 but all of a sudden, wow, it works. Very satisfying. Whoa, what a question. Good one. Hope that helps. Next.
Well, we're over 500.
Oh.
Let's do Frick's story.
All right. So, in case you weren't here, last week we had Ernie, and by the way, Ernie will be coming back. We got to get a different piece of equipment to handle that delay that we had. It was, as somebody described it, a hot mess. Ernie, we had a 15-second delay, Frick?
Chisel Frick?
Are we having a reenactment? We can do it with
Well,
the
I
other
thought
hand?
they'd want to see.
Okay.
You want your chisel too?
No, I don't want
It's
to.
got a safety tip on it.
I don't want to see that thing ever again.
So let's set this up. So we were trying to get this right, and there was a 15-second delay. So every time Ernie and I are trying to talk, and it was just a mess. So Frick, in the background, says, "I'll fix this." So he grabbed a coil of wire, and it had 2 zip ties on it.
Zip ties. Now it has
1 zip tie.
thin electrical tape, which would have been nice. But.
So Jake and I are filming away, and in the background, Frick is over here. He's trying to get this done quick to get things moving, and he took a chisel. Reenact this. And what did you hold? You hold it like
No,
this? No.
I had it.
I'm not
on-
letting you touch this.
Well, I'm not gonna. I can't do it again, obviously. So I had it on the table like this. The chisel was the closest object. So I cut through one zip tie, and the other one wasn't going through. So I was holding this side of the cables, and then using the chisel, and then it slipped off and went into my finger.
It went in. So here's where it went in. It went in right here.
No, it didn't.
Right here, didn't it?
No, it went right in the front.
Hit this
I thought. How did it get around to the side?
It went in here and slid this way.
Oh, it did that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I had the other way around. So it went in like this, hit the bone, cut halfway through the tendon, and then rode the bone over, cut through both nerves,
2 nerves.
2 nerves, and the artery.
An artery, and chipped the bone in half.
And Frick's doing this, so there was blood splatter everywhere. Jake and I all week, oh, hey, look, more blood. Finding blood. But they sewed him up. You tell them the rest of the story.
Well, at the time, I obviously didn't feel it. I was probably in shock, or the adrenaline was going. And as he said, I was shaking it. Didn't really think much of it. Went outside, passed out shortly after. Woke up in Jake's car on the way to the hospital. They stitched me up. Had surgery 2 days later. And here I am. So that's where they told me where I got 2 nerves, artery, half the tendon and the bone. And it's about a 13-week healing process. Can't use my arm for about 6 weeks. Got 7 or 8 stitches in it now. So I'd show you the video, but it's quite gruesome.
Anyway, he lived.
Yep.
Glad to have him back.
Yep, that's it.
This is everything.
The discussion on the way to the hospital was the sharpness of the chisel, because
Can you hear?
the discussion on the way to the hospital between Jake and I was the sharpness of the chisel, because the chisel wasn't actually sharpened. It was retail sharpened from IBC, but it was not RobCosman sharpened. So we were debating whether or not it would have taken my entire finger off if it was RobCosman sharpened. But at the same time, if it was RobCosman sharpened, it probably would have cut the zip tie. So that's a question we're going to have to live with for a while. So.
Someday we may have to go through.
But thank you, everybody, for your messages. I got a ton of messages, emails, text messages, and everybody concerned. And yeah, it helped me get through it a little bit better. So thank you, everybody.
No, you still complain.
Oh, I still got to complain. Got to milk it for the wife, you know.
Yeah.
I'm on a lot of drugs right now, just so you know.
None of them legal.
You're going to do another question, then when we come back, we'll
Sure.
introduce them to the little moose.
Mike Curry in Delavan, Wisconsin.
Hey, Mike.
Is there a board or box size or other rule of thumb where you would use box joints instead of dovetails?
No, I have my box joint thing jig there. The only reason we use box joint is for speed, and we do that because where's the there it is right here. So the fancy saws that I make, we put them we make the boxes for those, and it's a box joint. Well, I can't dovetail all of these. So we do this, it's the same size, all the pieces are the same dimension. So when that jig is set up, we can crank them out really quick. And that makes it feasible. I tell you the story a little differently. When I was trying to survive as a woodworker, I would make fancy little boxes like this with the wooden hinge. This is made out of a piece of figured maple, has deerskin on the inside and outside. It has your Cosman-esque wood hinge and all dovetailed. Well, that would sit in a gallery somewhere, And it would sit alongside of this box. Well, actually, it's a better example right here. And the average non-woodworker person walking through couldn't tell the difference, didn't care. They thought both of them were interesting. Well, this box could easily have taken me 4 hours on the joinery, and this box I can do start to finish in under an hour. So from a profitability standpoint, it made a whole lot more sense to do these since the people buying them didn't care one way or the other. They just liked the look of it. So if you look, this is very crude, but I mean, this was all built when I was having to produce. So over here, I got it all worked out. I made up a jig that would allow you to have a larger finger joint and a smaller finger joint, which came a little bit closer to mimicking a dovetail. Instead of having a true box joint where the pieces are all the same size, it's more like you see on a fruit box as opposed to a nice little box like this. So on this side, I've got a 1/2 inch straight bit. What? I see him. And on this side, I've got a 3/16 straight bit. And I have this all made out so it's real slick. But you have to have, the way I make the boxes, the backs, the pin board, I call that the pin board. I like to have it so that the lid comes down in and sits flush with the top. So these pieces are always wider than these pieces. And in order to get it just right, if one piece is, on the small ones, the sides are 7/8 and the ends are 1.25 inches. Or the next size up is 1 inch and 9/16 and 1 inch and 7/8. And that spacing is so that it all works out perfectly. And that's what's there. So there's no time that I would do a box joint over a dovetail unless it was in a production piece where the results weren't going to matter. And in case you want to see this.
Ken,
What's up, Mickey?
can you open that door?
Oh, we can't get out?
The door is locked.
So if you want to see what this one, these are supposed to on the website last week. So this is the new 3/4 Len Robichaud dovetail saw. This is the little skinny one for doing small boxes. This is black and white ebony. It's the only piece I had to be able to make a handle out of. Gorgeous stuff. And thanks to Harold Snodgrass, Harold makes all of our boxes now. That's how it comes. Okay, let's introduce. Where's Megan? She's coming. So Megan, Jake and Megan had their first baby. How many days ago?
9.
On the 9th? No.
9 days ago, on the 2nd.
On the 2nd of December. And unfortunately, Moose, who's usually always with us, we got our wires crossed. He didn't know we were filming tonight. Jake named his little boy after Bruce, which is affectionately known as Moose. So this is little Moose. I think he's going to come in and make his debut. Megan, you going to bring Moose?
Luther wanted me, while we're waiting there, Luther wanted me to remind you to mention the PHP Saw collab video with James Wright because it's being auctioned right now on his website.
Oh, is it? It's been released?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know that. So James Wright and I collaborated. I did an interview on his site, and we decided to do something. So I made a video, and I built a dovetail saw with a purple-infused, resin-impregnated maple handle. It looks, this is what it looks like in the rough, but when it's finished, it's looked really nice because this stuff polishes up beautifully. But what's really nice about it is it doesn't dull. Whereas Purple Heart changes color, this one doesn't. So here's Mama. Want to give all the details?
All details.
He's a baby.
He is alive.
They're going to want to know how much did he weigh?
He's 8 pounds, 1 ounce.
34 centimeters.
Did he come into the world screaming or
He's long. He's 22 and something inches.
show him the back? So you notice his Don't moose with me. Look at these feet. Little purple feet, just like Jake used to have. So what's his name? You want to tell the story? Tell the story. These people want to know.
What?
Well,
Well, he was born.
tell the story of his
We
name.
named him. His name is Bruce Ryan. Bruce, obviously, after Moose, and Ryan after one of my karate senseis who was murdered 5 years ago. Ryan Jimmo.
Ryan actually fought in the UFC and met with tragedy. We're good friends with his family. His dad has taught all karate to all of my children. How many have black belts? 3 or 4? You and
4.
Erica,
Annika does too.
Annika,
Loren.
and Loren. So this is baby Bruce, and his nickname is going to be Little Moose.
Moosey Brucey.
There's a lot of hockey and stuff going on in the background that you probably don't understand, but we're a different breed.
McLaren wants to know if he can ride the motorcycle.
McLaren is his cousin.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Come again. Next question. That, by the way, is my 6th grandson. We have no granddaughters.
You didn't finish the
Story on
The-
collaboration.
yeah.
Yep. So, sorry, I made the saw, then I sent it to James, and he made a special box, and now he's auctioning the box with the saw in it off on his website. Is you guys gonna put the details up?
Yep.
And
Find
the-
the website.
And the proceeds will be donated to the Purple Heart Project. And in case you don't know what the Purple Heart Project is, under normal times, 6 times a year, 1 week each month, starting in May through October, we run a 6-day, very intense hand tool workshop. We go Monday to Saturday. We go from 7 in the morning till 10, 11 at night. We bring in 7 paying customers, and 7 combat wounded vets come as our guest. We provide them with their airfare, their hotel, their meals. Actually, we do all of that right here. And we send them each home with, I guess, what amounts to somewhere between $400 and $4,500 worth of premium hand tools. So they take home exactly what I use. And thanks to the Bench Brigade, Jack Lane and Chris Chahusky and Jim, what's Jim's last name up in Moncton?
Merzetti?
Merzetti, I hope I pronounced that properly. Jim up in Moncton, who is the northern division of the Bench Brigade. They, volunteers, procure the materials, build a bench to our specs, and then when possible, actually deliver it so that every combat wounded vet that comes through our program gets to have a bench. Now, we just started that a year and a bit ago. So if you're a combat wounded vet that's been to our program and never got a bench, you need to contact me so we can get that taken care of. We'll reach back right to 2016 in the class that we first did back in November. I've been trying to reach as many as I can, but some I've not been able to get a hold of. And if you're a combat wounded vet that's been to our scholarship program, please make yourself known on the Ken. Ken's watching, and we'll give you a shout out. We'd love to reconnect with you. Big shout out to Kyle up in Newfoundland. Kyle recently drove
9 hours? 8 or 9 hours?
8 or 9 hours in both directions to deliver a bench that he built. Even though Kyle was in our, he was one of the first. He and Jesse Rufienge were the first 2 Canadians we had in our class back in 2017, I think. And Kyle volunteered to build a bench for Eric Halmerson. And Eric, you've heard me talk about Eric because I don't know too many guys that joined. Hi? Hey, Eric. I don't know too many guys who joined the Army at age 50. He fought. Actually, his son was his son was his boss. They fought together in Afghanistan. And when Eric turned 59 on the front lines of Afghanistan, his commander brought out a birthday cake to him. So, pretty remarkable guy. Eric came here. It was wonderful to have him. Kyle drove that bench to Eric and delivered it and drove back home. And I just think that was and you know what? I talked to Kyle a couple times since, and that was that was a highlight for him. So just great that the two of them got to say hello. And Jack tries to make it so that the people that build the bench get to actually deliver it. And I can't say this without mentioning how, was it who made the arrangement with the courier to deliver?
Jeff Church,
Jeff Church, who's a pilot for UPS, contacted UPS, told them the story. They, at their expense, went to the guy's house who built, was it Jeff built the bench? Went to Jeff's house, packaged it up, delivered it to Hawaii, one of the vets that we had that was in Hawaii, and took care of all that expenses. Which,
well, they flew Jeff.
And they flew Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff delivered it.
Yeah, big shout out to UPS for doing that. So if you're trying to decide between UPS and somebody else on who to deliver your package, give UPS a serious consideration based on what they did. I think they actually volunteered to do it. He just told the story, so. Some wonderful support out there. I could tell you stories all night long about people delivering benches, and it is a highlight. If you'd like to be a part of this, we got quite a few, but if you really would like to be a part of this, no matter what part of the world you're in, you send me an email and I will forward it to Jack Lane, and he'll put you in the database so the next time we have a soldier coming to our workshop that's in your area, you'll be building that bench for him. Frick, give me another question. Give me another question, please.
Okay. Next question comes from Gary Ross in Arizona.
Hi, Gary.
What is the best method for getting accurate, repeatable miter cuts for boxes?
What is the best method for getting accurate, repeatable miters on boxes? So I would assume that what he's talking about is something like this, where you're cutting a flat miter, you're cutting a miter on these two pieces. That's a miter joint. So the first thing I would say is be a really sharp. I'd almost have a new blade that I saved just for that. And if you want a recommendation, we love these Freud blades. We don't get any special consideration from Freud, so I'm just telling you this and passing on a good tip. What do we use? The 80 tooth?
80 tooth crosscut.
80 tooth crosscut, 10-inch, beautiful. And I like the thin kerf. So you want a really good sharp blade. You want a good. I have it right here. I think I do. Yeah. I make a special sled that fits in my table saw. Sorry, this way. And it cuts on a 45. I make it so when those guides fit in your slots, there is no slop at all. And I'm just careful when I use it. I'm careful when I put it away so it doesn't get banged around. Make sure your saw is set so it's right on 45, and you may have to do some playing with that in order to get it right. But if you do that, you can usually get away with. Oh, the other thing too is I'll make a cut that's, if the box is going to be, the side's going to be 10 inches, I'll make a cut that's maybe a 10 1/8, and then I'll go back in and I'll just trim the last little bit off. But usually, under those circumstances that I just explained, you can join right from the saw, which isn't always the case. I've made a miter before, so that you could actually plane across that end, and maybe we'll do another one at some point. But for small boxes, I think you can get away with that, and it'll work perfectly. And then use the tape trick for putting it together. But you didn't ask me that question. Another question, Frick?
Yep, Greg Porter in Alabama. You made small boxes for years with the full-size dovetail saw. What's the advantage of switching to your 3/4 saw, and when will the 3/4 saw be available again?
It is. They're on up now, aren't they, Ken? So here's how this happened. We ended up doing a series of small projects on the online workshop. We did the bloke box, which had little tiny dovetails in thin wood. The sides, I think, were 3/16 of an inch thick. I did that one for my wife that had that jewelry box, and that had all kinds of, had 8 drawers in it, and all the sides, and all were real small pieces. And I just remember thinking one time, I said, I wish I had a little smaller saw for doing these. Saw that I have is wonderful for what I would call drawer-sized dovetails, but when you get into little small pieces of wood, it just seemed to be like you were using too big of a tool. So we actually started work on this almost 2 years ago, COVID hit, and that caused a problem with us getting supplies, but we finally got it. I went with the really thin kerf, so the blade is 15 thou, whereas my normal dovetail saw blade is 20 thou. The set is the same, 2 thou per side. But on this saw, we went with 22 teeth per inch all the way, but the front 1.5 inches, the teeth, instead of the cutting face being 0, we've got it laid back like that. So you can go in there with that first 1.5 inches and with any very minimal resistance, get the saw started right where you want it, and then finish up with the rest of it, and boom, away it goes. And we cut the saw, we cut the, we did everything 3/4. Our normal handles are 1 inch. We cut these down to 3/4. Our normal brass is 7/8. We cut this down to 3/4. It's a smaller blade. It's a thinner blade, and it just it works great. It's if you're doing small dovetails. If you're doing fine with the one you hire, great. But if you find, like me, you just, I wish I had something a little bit tinier for working this small stuff, try it. But they're back in stock. Did you confirm that, Ken? Yeah, we did. Ian finished 20 of them, I think, on Friday, so they're there. So how many people do we have on, Frick?
660.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a treat. Actually, give me 2 more questions, and then I'll introduce the treat.
Before I give you a question, John DeMio's with us.
John is. Hi, John.
And he just wanted to let us know that Herman was joined in heaven today by his longtime friend Tony Shiano, who died today. He was 98 years old, served in World War II with him. So
Served in Iwo
Jima, yeah.
Iwo Jima. Thank you, John. I appreciate you telling us that. If you haven't seen the video that we did with John's dad, Herman DeMio, you need to go back and watch that. It was in October 2020, and that was the most memorable YouTube video we've ever done. We had Herman on, just fantastic. I can't tell you, I can't put in words what you'll watch when you see it. It's just great. And nice to see you, John. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Appreciate you speaking up. Question, Frick.
Okay, next question comes from Paul Testoni.
Hey, Paul.
I would like to line my boxes with some sort of material, leather, fabric, felt, etc. What do you find is the best material for professional look, and more importantly, what is the best way for a perfect fit? Thank you.
Okay, so let me tell you what not to do first. Where's the, where did I set it down?
Which one?
The deerskin.
Right there. Your hand was an inch away from it.
No, okay, where? Oh, there. So this one, I thought I'd be clever. There was there used to be Tandy leather shop all over the place, but in Canada there was only one left, and it was in Calgary. And I was there one time, and they had some deerskin, and it was really nice and supple. I finished I put the bottom in, and then I apply the finish. So I had used, actually you can see some of it's still there, green painter's tape to protect the leather. And that deerskin is so fragile that in taking off, I pulled the nap off of it. You can see it really ruined it. But I love the fact that it's in there. It's just nice and touch. So don't use deerskin. Now here's one, not finished. Here's just black leather, and that works great. And what's nice about it is when you drop stuff in there, you don't hear that hollow ring. It's just gives it a little bit of a cushion. I didn't do the outside on that one. And the way I do that is you never want to apply it after the fact. So you apply it to the bottom, and then just fit the bottom into the box. You're gonna have to make your groove a little bit wider, but that's the way you do it. And then you get a nice tight fit everywhere on the inside. This is an unfinished box, but. So I think leather is the ideal. This one I used Tennessee aromatic cedar. This one is Eastern cedar. So sometimes if you want a bit of a nice aroma, I'm going to look and see if I have any that have. I've used a felt product. I don't think I have any of those left. That one is? Yeah, there it is. So this stuff, can't even remember what it was called. Don't think you can buy it anymore. So it's kind of like the nappy side of leather, but it's man-made, and it's peel and stick. And it was really nice because you'd lay the sheet down, and you'd take your bottom after it's already been sized, set it on there, and just trim all the way around it. It was super easy to use. It came in green, red, brown, and navy blue. And I used that for years. There's another example of leather. Now, sometimes it is problematic. Do you see how it's kind of bunching up on me right there? Fitting it into the groove. And what you can do in a circumstance like that is you can take a chisel, and if you're careful, you can go in and just right there, I shouldn't do this, and just push it down and try to tuck it underneath.
It's working.
And you can usually remedy that. That's the only problem with the leather, because the bottom of the leather sticks to the wood, and then you've got the thickness of the leather, and the top part's not that great. There's the same. There's a leather one where I turned it the other way, so it's the smooth side. What do we got on this one? This one was just wood. Nothing wrong with that. This one is wood. Another leather one. I use the leather a lot. I used to buy a big sheet of, or a big hide or whatever you would call it, of leather, and you could get a lot of boxes out of it. Yeah, that's all the examples I have. So my first choice would always be leather, and you can do either side of the leather. I think the smooth side of the leather is a cleaner looking product. But make sure you put it on the bottom first, and just regular glue, by the way, regular tight bond glue. Glue it on. Don't need a whole lot, and never comes off. Works great. Next, Frick.
Next question comes from Barry O'Mahony in Bend, Oregon.
Hi, beautiful place, Bend.
He says,
Been there.
any pro tips for when you're trying to make a box where the grain wraps around all four corners? Using a thin curved blade to do the resawing is one, I imagine. My results have been hit or miss. To any other pointers you can provide, be appreciated.
Okay, I need you to read it. Let me read it one more time, a little slower.
Well, really, it's the first part that matters. Any pro tips for when you're trying to make a box where the grain wraps around all four corners?
Yeah, so you can't match all four corners, right? You take your board and you make all your cuts, so this corner is not going to look like that corner. The other ones will. So I always put that corner on the back somewhere. I'm just going to look and see if I've done this, because I know I would have. That one is so plain Jane, the walnut, that you can't tell anyway, so I hope I didn't waste too much time doing that. These mitered ones, it's usually only the miter ones that I do it on. You can do it on a dovetail, but people are going to look more at the dovetail than they are at the fact that you've run it all the way around. I've done it on chests of drawers. You're going to have some loss because you've got your thickness of your saw curve. So, the thin curved blade, that's not that big of a deal, but you are going to minimize some of it. Make sure you run some lines on the board before you cut it up so you can put it all back together. Number it. I've got it turned around on my before, and that's disappointing after you go through all that work. But other than that, I would do it rather than not do it, but it usually doesn't give you the effect that you're expecting. And whether I can't tell you why, it just sometimes seems to get lost and doesn't end up turning out to be nearly as dramatic as originally thought. But again, do it rather than not do it. Wait a minute, Nick, they can't hear you. Is anybody got a mic? There.
No, the receivers aren't charged, so.
Well, here, hold on, Nick. This could be epic.
I doubt that.
Any kind of an announcement coming with this, or are you just going to talk about the wood?
I think you were talking about taking a thicker piece of wood, like something about 1.5 inches, and rip it in half, and you can kind of put each end together, if you know what I mean. So you do get a continuous look. Yeah, essentially it's book matched.
Yeah.
On each side, and I guess it's closer, continuous grained than if you just cut your board
If you take a long board and cut it in 4
Yeah.
pieces. No, I haven't done that.
Yeah.
That was epic. I'd marry him. So here, let me tell you the story. In 2017, David Benson, retired Army, 17 years, half of it was in the Navy, which he
So that
said was
doesn't count.
pretty cushy. Spent a lot of time diving down in Cuba. Then he decided he wanted to re-enlist, join the Army. Ended up going to Afghanistan, fighting in the northern part of Afghanistan, some rough area. Had an RPG land not far away, and all of the shrapnel came up between his helmet and his head, and left him with a severe traumatic brain injury and other injuries. The shrapnel went up and around underneath his helmet. I think it saved his life. He ended up medically retiring after 17 years. Moved back home, and I met him because he had an old table saw that his father, I think, or grandfather had left him. But when he turned the saw on, the frequency was such that due to the TBI, the traumatic brain injury he'd had, it would just leave him with a debilitating headache. And he was kind of bummed because here he liked doing woodwork, but wasn't able to use the saw. So he was going on YouTube looking things over or something, and he'd bought a Cobalt plane. Ugh. And he called me. Somehow he got my number and called me and asked me if I had some advice on how he could get this thing to work. And apparently I told him, look for the closest garbage can and use it. But I don't know how I'd known, he had introduced himself, but I found out he was a combat wounded vet, and I said, you really need to apply to our program. So Dave ended up coming. We were teaching in Niagara Falls at the time, and he was from near Fort Drum, so it wasn't that far away, New York. Came to the class, didn't really stand out in the class. He was somewhat shy, although he's not really. He just kind of had his head down and went to work. And a lot of people in the class, whatever. We parted ways, left. The next class we came in to do was a bigger class. We went from having 12 students to having 14. We maybe even had 15. Something happened. And Luther always came. So it would be Jake and I and Luther would work, take care of those 15 students. And Luther ended up not being able to come at the last minute. And I remember saying to Jake, we're in trouble. What are we going to do? And it may have been that very same day. It may have even been that very same hour. I get an email from Dave. And he says, Rob, he said, my wife says I'm close enough that I should volunteer if you need any help. And I called him up, or either emailed him or called him up. I said, Dave, are you kidding me? We are desperate. Yeah, absolutely. Can you come? He came. He and Jake hit it off well. They were gone most of the week. I was stuck working by myself. But Dave really opened up. And a real friendship developed between he and Jake and he and I. And Dave's been here. I can't tell you how many times he's come up here and just come for the week. We come up for fishing trips. We'd never get out of the shop. And there's parts and pieces of boxes all over this place that he partially finished and going to come back and finish someday. Anyway, so how often do you talk to him, Jake?
I'm talking to him right now.
No. How often? So he and Jake are on the phone 2 or 3 or 4 times a day. I sometimes think Megan gets jealous. So we're big fans of Seinfeld and MASH. And Jake and I would come home from hockey at night, and we'd have a snack, and we'd watch an episode of Seinfeld. I'd never watched Seinfeld when it was on. I only saw it after the fact, but it was funny. Saw most of the episodes. And Rex, my son, got this idea. Now, you have to understand, you have to appreciate and know Seinfeld in order to appreciate this. But Rex got this idea. Nobody knew anything about it. And I can't believe Dave actually agreed to do it. But this was Jake's birthday present last year, or Christmas present last year. And Dave said we could show it if we broke a certain record on donations on this, and we did. July 31st, by the end of the night, we raised $20,000. But we have saved it for Christmas. So this is what hangs
Wait, before you do that, I'm going to show the original photo on the screen so they all can see.
This is where the idea came from.
Yeah, this is called The Timeless Art of Seduction.
So this is what hangs in Jake's office, And come to think of it, Jake's office has been finished for 6 months. This has been hanging there, and he has yet to move into that office. So whether that has anything to do with it or not, I don't know. So this is the timeless art of seduction. Signed copies are available. Michelle, his wife, wants the first one. We'll just leave that up in the background. Super Dave, you are a great sport for doing that. And
Yeah, that's enough.
no, we're leaving it. I don't think there's any photoshopping, was there?
Yeah, I photoshopped the background in there
Oh, did you?
and the words, and
But you left the main
I got
part?
rid of some extra wrinkles.
And they are wrinkles, age related. All right. So that's your Christmas present. Enjoy it. Next question, Frick.
Okay, next question comes.
Oh, wait, here's Super Dave and Luther. These two guys are a huge part of the success of our business and also the Purple Heart Project. Amazing how when you're trying to do something, the right people come into your life. So these are twins, just different mothers. This is Luther. This is Super Dave, who we now call the GOAT, which stands for the greatest of all time.
They said we should make that next year's Christmas card.
Super Dave said, pull the plug, Megan.
Pull the plug, Megan.
Bob Abbott said, "Please get it away from my cutting boards."
Yeah, Bob, you're jealous. All right, a couple more questions, and I want to talk to you about there are prizes tonight. I'm going to tell you about that, too. Don't forget to register. Another question, please, Frick.
Yep, Jim Pearson.
Jason Krantz.
Wait, hold on. Jason.
Jason Krantz said, is that the leather couch from the classroom that we all sit on?
No.
No.
Jim Pearson in Saranac Lake, New York says, since trays are similar to a box, how would you dovetail a compound mitered corner where the four sides slope out?
Oh, you know what? I've never done that. So I'm sorry, I can't answer for you. I'm sure there's some instructions somewhere, but I have never done that. I've done them where they're just one side's flared, but I've never done a compound flaring. Sorry, can't give you any help on that one. Another question, Frick?
Jerry Gillette, Camp Hill, Pennsylvania.
Hey, Jerry.
Any tips on layout and cutting green and green style finger joints? He has green and green in quotation. I'm not
Yeah. What would be different about green and green? The fact that they protrude? If you're talking about making them so that they protrude, in other words, they stick out beyond, let me know and I'll talk to you about that. In other words, I'm not 100% sure what you mean. So if you can send that question in, I'll address it. Frick, next.
Second here. Brad in Australia.
Hi, Brad.
He says, I'm just starting out in my woodworking. I'm using my grandfather's old tenon saw to cut my dovetails using the Cosmonized method, but the results are not good. The saw is difficult to start, which is causing damage from the start. Can you talk about sharpening and if I can modify my saw to be more efficient?
Well, yeah, there's two answers. The first answer is only costs you $250, and it'll have you cutting dovetails that will amaze you inside of a couple of days. That's a big promise, but if you pay attention and do it, it'll happen. So I don't know what this old tenon saw looks like, but typically tenon saws are larger. So if this is a dovetail saw, this is a tenon saw, or maybe even this is a tenon saw. And the bigger it is, so one of the factors in being able to control your saw is the distance between the heavy brass back now they use a heavy brass back because the thin blade would otherwise want to wobble and flex. Heavy brass back keeps it nice and rigid. But a tenon saw, you need depth here. So here's your tooth line, here's your heavy brass back, it's a little wobbly. If you do this all the time, you develop stability in your wrist and it doesn't matter. But if you're doing it as a hobby, you cut tenons so infrequently that you probably never gain that real stable approach. So if you look at the distance, and I'll use both dovetail saws. So your heavy brass back is closer to your tooth line, even closer on the new one. And what that means is stability this way is going to be greatly improved. Now, excuse me, that's going to help a lot. You don't need, I wouldn't cut dovetails with this in these boxes because I'm only using this much of the blade. All of that is just allowing for that instability. So you don't need a great depth of cut typically for boxes or even drawers. So another reason to get a smaller, narrower blade. The starting process, I left that for last. Starting process is the most critical because if you, as you've already found out, if you don't get your saw cut started in the right spot, then the rest of the process is just going to be a series of correcting errors. So you have to be able to go in after the layout and get that saw to start exactly where you want. So on our regular dovetail saw, the first 2 inches has 22 teeth per inch with a negative, about negative 25, 30 degree cutting face. What's that mean? Well, it's slow cutting, and when the teeth are 0 degrees on the cutting face, meaning if I were to put a square, on this, like so, those teeth, the cutting part of those teeth, cutting face, is square to the blade. Very aggressive. But on these front teeth, it's leaning back like that, has a tendency to ride over the wood. So it allows you to come in. If you try to use the back part here, the teeth are really grabbing. You're having to push, 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 and in the process, the more effort you apply, the less control you have. Out here, I can start that just enough to catch my thumbnail. Once I do that, that little kerf is going to hold the blade, and as I move forward, the big teeth cut nice and fast. The saw cut is exactly where I want it. If I do it right, that means I don't have to come in and touch it with a chisel. It's finished. This one, because of how small the teeth were, we just took those first 1.5 inches and we laid them back. So the same idea. You can come in, get it started, and then hit it with the teeth that are more aggressive, and boom, away you go. Now, what can you do with your old saw? I brought that up because if it's a tenon saw, it's probably going to be it's not the right piece of equipment for the job. Yes, you could go in and sharpen it. You can bring the set down to make it work better, but you're still using a shovel where you should be using a hoe. I don't know if that's a very good analogy, but the first thing you want to do is sharpen the teeth. They've got to be sharp. The set means that each tooth is alternately bent, so if you look down the tooth line, it's going to look like this. This tooth goes that way, the next tooth is bent this way, this way, this way, this way. That gives you a kerf or a groove that's wider than the blade so that it doesn't bind in the kerf. You don't want a lot of set, you want a minimal, but if you're brand new at this and you're gonna go in and try to reset, resharpen, and reset the teeth, wow, you're biting off more than you can chew. And we're busy enough making saws, I don't need to work this hard to sell another one, but you need to get our saw and just go to work on learning to cut dovetails instead of trying to fix it. You want to come back afterwards once you know what you're doing and start restoring some of your grandfather's old tools, more power to you. But in the beginning, get the tool that'll do the job and just go at it. That's the best advice I can give you. Frick, I want to just introduce everybody's here tonight. So Nick brought Erica with him. They've been here. They haven't been here in a while, but they used to be regulars. And Nick took our class with. Who were you in the class with? Name some of the guys, some of the vets. Who were you in with, Jake? Oh, can't hear him. Sorry. So he was in with Jake Tirola. Peter Ambrose? Pete Ambrose?
No. Was it? No. It was Pete from Tennessee, wasn't it? Yeah, he was with George.
Danny Bell.
Was he with Dan? No.
No, he was with George. George from Knoxville.
Yeah, George runs is the assistant manager at the Woodcraft store. Yeah. Anyway, so Nick is a carpenter, but also runs a business building tables and all kinds of stuff. What's your website? New Brunswick Finery, NB Finery. NB Wood Finery, FINERY.com. Oh, it's on Instagram or Facebook, so you can check them out. Ken's here. So Ken's in charge of production. So he handles everything on that side of the wall. Jake takes care of everything on the other side of the opposite wall, and I don't do anything. But Ken keeps things running, and we crank out a lot of stuff of good quality and all the nice stuff. But Ken has a cousin, and her name is Angie. This is Angie. She is... because of an illness, she's confined to her bed. But Angie does all the packaging of our Purple Heart t-shirts. So when you get a t-shirt, there'll be a little seal on it, and there'll be a little A where she's done it, quality controlled it. That's her with her new hat. We always... Oh yeah, and so last night, yesterday afternoon, we had our company Christmas party over here, which was catered to by Shawana Thai restaurant. James and his parents own it. Great supporters. They gave us a check for $5,000 here a month or so ago to the Purple Heart Project. Fantastic food. They came and catered. Everybody was full. It was delicious. And while there, we brought Angie in on Zoom, and we presented her with her very own apron that Tony Bahadur. Tony is another combat wounded vet. Came to our program. He actually works here 2 days a week. He and Al McNeil works here as well. Both Canadian combat wounded vets, both military, retired,
Army.
Medically retired, and both 20 some odd years. Al was a tank commander, got blown up on his last tour in Afghanistan by a suicide bomber, but Al won. And Tony had 1 tour in Haiti, 1 in Bosnia, and 4 in Afghanistan. So. And the word, yeah, oh yeah, and Angie was, oh, by the way, there's an apron right there. I just want to show, isn't this the apron, Jake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tony had these made up for us. And Angie, we sent Angie home with one of these, and on the back, everybody signed it. And she was Employee of the Year. Put that in your hat. Huh?
The only one that doesn't complain.
The only one that doesn't complain, right? She wore out her first apron. Frick's here. Jake's here. Luther's online. Super Dave is on.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Super Dave's right behind us.
He said,
Some combat wounded vets that are joining us.
We can't hear him.
Can't hear Ken?
Jake, give him your mic.
Mike? Hold on, Ken.
These are just guys that attended classes. Phil Lawrence in class of 2018.
Yeah, hi, Phil.
We already mentioned Eric, class of 2021. Ray Dorr, October.
Ray, cool Ray down in, Ray, I hope you're all right. I hear about these tornadoes going through. Ray is in Louisiana.
And Gary Burnett.
And Gary Burnett, I talked to Gary this week. Gary, howdy do. Gary's in Tennessee. Hope you're safe.
And John Borden said hi. He's from Warmocto.
John Warden.
He wasn't in a class.
Yes. Yeah. I know John. Howdy, John. And Charlie's on? Salt of the earth, Charlie.
Danny Bell and
Merry Christmas, Charlie.
Danny Bell,
And it's
yeah.
great to have you back, brother. Danny Bell?
Danny Bell is here.
Who's
and
Danny Bell?
Bob Abbott.
Danny Bell. Danny Bell recently retired. Danny was a Chinook helicopter pilot. And Danny recently moved his family from Tennessee to Maine, just one step away. And Danny now works for us. Danny's our latest employee. Danny is going to be in charge of our Instagram account. So you should see that be blossom. And we're also going to start, and I think I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, we're going to have a special PHP Instagram account so we can keep in touch and let you guys know what's going on. I'm going to talk about Danny and Bob and Kevin and Jeff shortly. Are either one, Kevin or Jeff, on?
yeah, Kevin's here.
Hey, Kev. Kevin Burris 22 years EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. So his job was to protect the troops by finding these hidden bombs and defusing them before they killed somebody. And Kevin endured well over 100 blasts, somewhat uncontrolled blasts. The last one was 1,500 pounds, and it took him out. And it's been a long road to recovery, but check out Burris Woodworking, B-U-R-A-S Woodworking, and see what Kevin is doing. Because Kevin, I'm going to do it now. Kevin and Bob. Bob was U.S. Air Force Intelligence. Does that all work in the same line? U.S. Air Force Intelligence? Bob went back as a contractor to Iraq, and ended up getting injured in a suicide bomber attack. And Bob, if you go to thevintageveteran.com, that's Bob's website. So stop right there. So we give away gifts every night. So you guys put your name in for a draw. At every $1,000 increment, we'll be more generous tonight because it's Christmas. We'll give away, we'll draw names and give you something. So Bob is supplying, now we buy them from him. Bob is supplying 2 cutting boards. This one is the drunken cutting board, and I forget the name of this one. It's my favorite one. Isn't that cool? So somebody will be lucky to get that. They're here. They arrived the other day, and depending on how it goes tonight, we may give away more than one of these. Anyway, so Bob is running his business. Danny is running his. Kevin is running his. Kevin's going to get some stuff for us. So we buy it from them, retail, and then we give it away to you folks. And Santa Claus, I always have to mention Santa Claus, who really was the keystone in getting me going on this in this direction. I don't give him enough credit. He's covering at least half of the cost of this, and we're covering the other half. But to show our appreciation for your support for the Purple Heart Project. So Kevin's going to be supplying us with stuff. We're going to get stuff from Bob and Jeff O'Connor. So I think Jeff's new tag is up. So it would be O'Connor Woodworking. There's no apostrophe. OCONNOR woodworking.com. And Jeff makes shave brushes and shave bowls and all kinds of stuff. You'll see it on his website. Beautiful website. And we've got some of that stuff coming as well, so we'll give that away tonight. So those 4 guys and I are in a group where it's fantastic. And it's all about helping us grow our business and grow our vision, and tell you more in time. It is good. Good. Okay, next question, Frick.
Okay, so next question comes from the chat. Comes from Luther Bush. Oh, Ebby's here too, just so you know.
Ebby?
Yep. Forgot to mention him.
Hi, Ebby.
All right, Luther Bush. It's his first time watching live. He's very interested, and his question is, what is the best box size and corners to use on first box? I think he probably means material.
Read that again, please, because I didn't quite get it.
What is the best box size and corners to use on your first box? I think he might mean like best wood, maybe.
Read it one more time, please.
He just says best box size and corners to use on first box.
Best box size and corners to use on a first box. Well, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking, but let me give it to you. Let me give you this. Where are those little tiny ones, Jake? Do you see them? There's one right there. Nick, can you hand that? Can you reach that? That little one right there. Thank you. You have what I don't. Oh, this is the one that fell off the. So here's one right here. I would not advise you to start with something small like that. The smaller ones are actually harder to do. If I was going to say what size would be easy to work, I would say, where's that? Right here. This is a nice size. It's nice because especially if you're older and you got a bit of arthritis, it's easier to hold on to the pieces that are this size. I'll give you the dimensions. So actually, let me address that real quick. You want the size, you want the shape to be pleasing. It's just a square box. It's just a rectangular box, right? But there's something called the golden rectangle. I don't pay too much attention to it. I usually just kind of do it what feels right, but it usually fits well within that formula. And that is the length to the width to the height. And actually, I've got several things I want to address here for you. So this one happens to be exactly 7 3/4 long, 3 3/4 deep, wide, and the overall height is 2.5 inches. So if you're going to make a box that size, you don't want thick, clunky material. So what I've done is I've made the sides 1/4 inch thick. I've made the ends 7/16 of an inch thick. Actually, that's not 7/16. That looks more like it's just shy of 7/16. And the reason I do that is because I like to elongate the tail. So when you're laying out your corner, if it's a dovetail, then your baseline on this piece is the thickness of this piece. And your baseline on this piece is the thickness of this piece. If you go thin and thick, it allows you to stretch that tail out, and I just think it looks better and make it a little bit different on this end as well. So you don't want your materials to be too thick, you don't want them to be too thin either. And the lid looks to be about 5/16 of an inch thick. So those dimensions seem to work in that box. Bottom is 1/8 inch plywood. You can use solid wood, I've done that as well. Hopefully that helps, but stay away from the real small ones, and you don't want real big. This is another nice size too. This one is just stretched out a little bit. So this one is 8 by 4 3/8 by 2 5/8. And I'll just show you this real quick because I don't think I've ever shown you this. So what I did with this, if you take red oak and sandblast it, red oak, when it grows, the wood that grows in the spring grows rapidly and becomes very fast growing. And if you look at the end of a piece of red oak, you'll see holes, you can actually blow through them. That's the spring wood. In the summer, where there's not as much moisture, the wood grows slower and it's denser. So when you sandblast, the spring wood wears away and the summer wood stays, and you get this driftwood feel. Now, oak has tannic acid in it. So if you take some vinegar and you put some steel wool or some iron filings or even some nails in there and leave it for a while, and then brush the vinegar on, it reacts with the tannic acid in oak, and it gives it that weathered look almost right away. So I don't typically use red oak, but under those circumstances. So I think it's really cool the way when you sandblast it, it eats it away and looks like something you might have found on a beach with dovetails. Yeah, right. So that's the scoop on that box. Left the inside as it is. Okay, next, Rick.
Dale, who's in the chat with us, he says, how do you do the inlays in the tops for your boxes?
How do you do the
these.
Say that again, please.
This.
Yeah, but I want to hear this question.
How do you do inlays in the tops for your boxes?
So if you're talking about this Dale, where's Dale from?
He's just from the chat, it doesn't say.
Yeah, he's from the chat. Yep. So what this one is, this is a little different style. These are the ones that I do mostly because I like the way it turns out, where the lid drops down into the box and it becomes flush with the ends. So you see how the ends are a little bit higher, and I like it. I like it. It also makes it easy to hide the end of the hinge. This one, I used to do these too. I would build the box. So in this case, the lid is fit into a groove. It's all on 4 sides. So that lid, just like the bottom, when did I make this? 2014. The lid, just like the bottom, have to be put into the groove while you're assembling the box. And after it was all put together, I would then cut the box open, cut the lid off, and you'd have this piece. And you'd have to carefully match this to this, so when it closes with a nice tight fit, and apply the wood hinge. So that's how that fits in there. But that's actually an 1/8 inch piece of kingwood. But you can see how it oxidizes and loses some of its pizzazz. I want to ask you folks to do me a consideration. So I'm working with these 4 vets. Jeff, I forgot to tell you, Jeff was a Navy EOD. This is an extremely dangerous job. And these guys literally put their life on the line every time they go out because they're going to dismantle bombs that the enemy has put in place with the intent of taking out our soldiers. And now they've got to go in and try to be one step ahead of the enemy. And Danny flying helicopters around in the middle of the night. You hear some of his stories, they're hair-raising. And Jeff, pardon me, not Jeff, but Kevin. I said to Kevin, I said, why didn't they take you off the line? You've been so blown up. He said, Rob, I was the only guy that could do the job. Who's going to take care of these men if I'm not there? What devotion. And as a result, Kevin has had to live with all kinds of physical wounds because of it. And Bob getting blown up as well. So the four of these guys, I think, are superstars. These are the real heroes that need to be recognized. There's lots of them out there. I'm just highlighting these four because I happen to be working closely with them right now. They are attempting to build a business. I know very little about this, but I know PTSD and traumatic brain injuries make it difficult to function in the normal world. We have two guys that work here, and they fit wonderfully in here, but it's tough. Like Al said when he came to my door, he said, I'm being invaded.
Hey, Cooper.
What's the matter, Kim? Just passing through. Al told me he was working he had retired and he was working in a service station gas bar, and he just said, you know, my PTSD, I just cannot handle rude people. So it's tough. So they're starting businesses. They do very good work. I would like you to consider going on their website, looking at what they're doing, and if there's something there that catches your eye, instead of buying it from a big box store, I'm going to suggest throw a little bit of your Christmas money, birthday money, anniversary money, whatever it is, at these guys. Take a look at what they're doing, and if you like it, patronize them, which is a nice way of saying thank you for your service and also giving meaning to what they're doing, and you'll be thrilled. I've got several of their pieces. It's just the right thing to do. So Merry Christmas to you. Let's make it merry for them. Help them kickstart this business. And I'm not asking for charity, but I am asking for consideration for four men that put their life on their line for 20 some odd years of their life. So please. Now Danny's site's not up and running. Well, Danny, it is and it isn't, but I don't even have, yeah. Pause on Danny. He's in the process of getting a new shop set up. But you can go to thevintageveteran.com, that's Bob. You can go to Burris Woodworking, that's Kevin. And you can go to O'Connor Woodworking, that's Jeff. So at least check them out for me. Thank you, appreciate it. Next question, Frick.
Okay, next question comes from, also from the chat, Clint Bourgeois.
Hey, Clint.
How would you cut dovetails on all three corners if you were doing a flag case?
Oh, you know what? I have been asked this a lot. I've got to figure this out because that's a tough one. How dovetails only go together one way, but there's got to be some way to figure it out. I'm surprised somebody hasn't done it. I'll take the challenge and see. I'll put some time in on it because I've been wanting to do that, but have yet to figure out how to do it. So don't have the answer, but stay tuned. Next, Frick.
Give me a second. Luther told me to do one here from the chat.
Have I forgot anything, Ken?
What? Okay.
Would you run and get me some Christmas cards, please?
We should have got the kids to all say Merry Christmas when they were here. Oh, well.
Oh, you come up with these ideas after the fact, Frick.
Well, I wasn't sure what they were
Are
doing.
you digging out a question?
Yeah, I got one.
What is it?
James Demare says,
Hi, James.
what is a good wood to start making boxes with?
Pine. Pine because, yeah. I was going to say it's cheap. It really isn't. But it's so nice to work with. And because it's nice to work with, it saws easily, it chisels easily, providing your chisels are sharp. And it's just a nice, comfortable wood. And especially when you're first getting going, yeah, pine. Pine. Cedar, no. Pine, Walnut, cherry, any of the domestic hardwoods, but I would probably start off with pine. I love that wood, and it ages better than all the rest. In fact, now that I mentioned that, so this is bird's eye, and it's gotten yellow. This is Wenge, and it's lost its black color. Got a good mind to refinish that. This is bird's eye and kingwood, and that's lost its pizzazz. This is maple, and it's yellowed. I don't like it. This is walnut, and it's turning gray. You know, there's the vibrant walnut color that's inside, with no exposure to UV light, and there's what happens when it is exposed. That's ebony on the top. That's only ever going to be black. Cherry is nice. It gets a deep maroon color, but it will bleach out if it gets too much light. But pine, actually, here's another one. So here's Purple Heart and maple.
difference.
And the maple's gotten yellow. What?
Look at the difference between the purple.
Inside and out?
No, front and back.
Oh, yeah, this sat somewhere where light was exposed. So see, it's lost all of its color. And that's on the back side, and that's on the inside. So most colorful woods don't hold the color very long. It fades with UV light. Pine just keeps getting better. Here's a really good example. So this is walnut that has been so bleached out. These dovetails are all outlined with maple. At one time they stood out and you could see them. Now you can't even see them. So another good reason. This is new, so it hasn't had a chance to yellow, but that's Macassar ebony and fiddleback maple. So haven't changed my mind, pine. So I want to bring your attention to this. So this is Kevin Lasky. Kevin now works here with us. Kevin's a local carpenter, also an artist. At age 15, he was in a bad motorcycle accident, and his mother bought him a set of paints to help him pass the time, and he decided he really liked it, and he's been painting Christmas cards ever since. And he did all our mess hall, if you've seen all the MASH stuff in our mess hall, and he's doing a big whole wall portrait of Joe Power, who we've named our shop after. Joe Power was my neighbor growing up, good friends with his son Murray and Terry. And Joe joined the Army, volunteered for the Royal Canadian Artillery in 1939 at age 16, underage. Fought all the way through the war. March 10th, 1945, a mortar came over the wall, decapitated his buddy. He got hit in the back of the head, woke up in a hospital in England 3 months later, paralyzed on his right side for life. So I knew Joe, and I just thought, well, this guy's a real hero. And so we've named our new classroom after him. And that wall out there, every one of those 8-foot panels is going to depict some aspect of Joe's involvement in World War II. So Kevin's a great guy and he's a fantastic artist. And I'd asked him to repaint the Art of Seduction. No, just kidding. Put some clothes on it. I asked him to make us a special MASH Christmas card. So he did. So if you're familiar with MASH, in season 1, there was an episode where Hawkeye was dressed as Santa Claus for the party, but a call came in. There was a soldier seriously wounded in a foxhole under fire. And Hawkeye jumped in the helicopter and came down a rope with his kit bag to help this soldier. So Kevin PHP'd it. You see the little Purple Heart logo back in here and MASH. And these are our Christmas cards. They were a little late in arriving, but they're here. We sell them in packs of 10. And the proceeds, we pay Kevin. And the other proceeds, actually most of the proceeds go to the Purple Heart Project. So if you'd like to get some, they're on our website now. A little late for Christmas card, but hey, better late than never. Next, Frick.
I actually don't have any.
No more questions?
We are out, which means more people need to subscribe to the newsletter so they get the notification, and then that way they can send their questions in advance.
All right.
But I'm out. Luther's trying to pick some out, so I should have some in a minute.
Well, how are we doing with donations?
I'm not keeping track of those.
How are we doing on numbers? How many people do we have?
716.
Do you have any idea how many people or how many gifts we're giving away tonight?
I don't. Let me contact Gina, see if she's...
Okay. Find out.
We only have 244 likes out of our 710 viewers. So if you could
Well,
hit
that
that
means
like,
a whole bunch of people don't like us.
Oh.
So either hit like or don't like. Let us know. Don't sit on the fence. You want to show the? Did I already show those saws last time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let me talk something about some of these boxes that we've done that might give you some ideas. There's a few of these that I don't think I've talked about a lot. So here's a bigger box, and this one is made out of red oak. And I liked it when I could play around a little bit. And this is another one of those ones where it was made out of red oak, dovetailed, and then sandblasted. And this shows even better how, with the sandblasting, you erode away, and it ends up looking like a piece of driftwood. But then I wanted the top to be stark contrast. So this is a piece of bird's eye maple. Now what I did for a hinge here, there's a pin. So there's a groove, or a quarter round groove cut on the top of this. The back side of the lid has been rounded to match it. And then there's a pin, wooden pin that goes all the way, well, not all the way through, it goes in probably about here. And that's the pivot point. And I have a little leather stay so that it wouldn't, the hinge, it wouldn't allow the lid to go back too far. And that's kicked around for a number of years. I don't even know when I made it, but it was fun to do.
We're at 2,200.
2,200, so we're giving away, well, we'll give away a bunch. Here's some boxes. We used to do, Nick, is there any other, there's one or two other finished ones up there if you want to. There's a little ladder right there. Please and thank you. So when we teach the class now, everybody makes a candle box. Now this is made out of mahogany and poplar, and poplar's not a very good wood to use, but it was an exercise. And then everybody did the same thing on the bottom, but then they could do whatever they wanted on the lid. So I made my lid, and it's just done with a plane, a half round instead of flat. Has a little bit of a rabbet all the way around there, so it'll sit down in. And then I just eased the edge right here so that you could get your fingers in there to grab hold of that to open it up. And these are half blinds. Now, the topic is building boxes. Yeah, okay, I will. So I used to, I literally survived. In 1987, I worked at Anderson Ranch Arts Center in Aspen, Colorado. It's actually in Snowmass Village. I was the assistant. Got to work with Sam Maloof, Alan Peters, Peter Korn, Silas Kaufman, Nora Robinson, Tay Frid, all these names. These were all the people that were writing the articles in fine woodworking that decade, and I got to be their assistant. So it was incredible. But what they paid me to be there was about $200 less than what our rent was. And I was married, and we had Eric at the time, and this was in between my third and fourth year of university, so I should be out working somewhere to earn money, but instead I was going into debt. But so the way I survived is at night I would make these boxes, these little wood hinge boxes, and we'd sell them off our bench, and we'd sell them at galleries around Aspen, and trust me, that was money much needed. But I made this for business cards. It was a simple little box. There literally was no material cost because most of what the pieces this is made out of would have been swept up and thrown away because they were of no value because of their size. But I could turn these little pieces into a neat little box that you would put business card in. And what I used to do is I would put leather in the bottom, and I would put a ribbon, and it would be tucked in here, and it would run, it started here, went across the bottom and up the top. So your cards would lay in, the ribbon would be on the top, and when you open it up, you would just pull on the ribbon like that, and it would lift the cards up. But it was just a nice little box. I always signed the bottom. I haven't signed this one. So as far as the wood hinge goes, this used a 1/4-inch wood hinge. Ken, you want to grab me a wood hinge drill kit, would you please? I haven't got one in here.
Yeah, you do.
I do?
Yeah, it's up there.
Oh,
It's
all
up
right.
by the
Oh, yeah, I do. I have it. Fine, thank you. So this is made up of a piece of maple dowel, a 1/4 inch in diameter, cut into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And there's a little welding rod that's about a 1/4 inch long by a 1/16 inch in diameter. And it's in between each joint. So it doesn't go all the way through, very difficult. But there's a hole drilled in the end of each one of these pieces. And then if you can see, there's been a a radiused groove cut in the lid and also in the bottom of the box or the back of the box. And you set that dowel that's been cut into pieces and then reassembled with a little pin in between each joint. And the first piece of the dowel gets glued to the bottom. The next piece of the dowel gets glued to the top, next to the bottom, top, bottom. You always wax so in other words, in that groove, before I set the dowel in, I put a little tick mark where each joint line is. And on this side, it's going to be glued, so I'll wax from that joint line, from this joint line to that joint line, so that keeps this piece of the dowel moving freely in case some glue spills over, squeezes over. And on the top, you do the opposite. So you set your dowel in, and I always have a pen mark or a pencil mark that I've made on the dowel before I put it back together, so that when I reassemble it, I can line up the grain. That sits down in there, and when you glue it, you have to glue both top and bottom at the same time, so then you've got the dowel protruding. Now, stop right there for a second. Sometimes I leave the dowel like this. I leave the dowel round on the back. See that? Most times, when it's after it's dried, I flush it off, plane it off. And if you do the job right, you can make it completely disappear. And I'm going to show you this example because I think this is the best one. So here's one made out of walnut. And you pretty much don't see the joint, the dowel, until I open it up. And that always surprises people. And it looks really nice and clean on the inside too. Now the trick to that, I was taught that principle back in 1986 by Dale Nish. 1985, 85 or 86. And it was, I was just blown away by it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But I don't remember how we drilled our holes then, but I know it was problematic. And when I say problematic, you're taking a piece of 1/4-inch dowel, hardwood dowel usually, and you're going to try to drill a hole that's only a 1/16 of an inch in diameter, and you got to put it in the dead center of this dowel. Well, you know that little drill is going to want to follow the path of least resistance. I wouldn't even attempt to do this in oak because the difference in the grain spring and summer in oak means that little drill will never stay true. But here's the jig that we made. We've sold thousands of these over the years. And it is called the wood hinge drill jig. We sell them on our site. All right, open this up. Okay, lots of parts and pieces, so let me just explain it to you. So you have 4 different size dowels that you can use. There's the 1/4-inch, so this is the receiver, 1/4-inch, 3/8, half, and 3/4. Now, why the difference in size? Well, on that little business card box, I use a 1/4-inch. When you step up to something this size, which is kind of a jewelry box size, I've used a 3/8 dowel. I don't think I have any examples here, but on furniture, jewelry, blanket boxes somebody asked about, I would use a 3/4-inch dowel. You have 2 receivers, and each receiver, one is has an 1/8-inch drill bit, the other has a 1/16-inch drill bit. So here's your drill bit. So you take your receiver, you put your drill bit in the hole, and you have it protrude out the end by the amount that you want to go into the dowel. So it doesn't need to be much more than that, maybe just a little bit more. And then there's 2 set screws on either side, so you're going to lock it in place. Now, I would recommend that if you're using the 1/16th, use it with those 2, 3/8 and the 1/4, and save the 1/8 for the 1/2 inch or the 3/4, but you can mix them up regardless. The reason why I recommend what I just did, or what I just said, is because when you flush off the back side, when you clean off the back side, the more wood you have between the center hole and the outside of the back, the stronger the joint's going to be to keep that from pulling through, that little piece of welding rod you put in there. So if you tried to use an eighth inch pin in a 1/4 inch, you don't have much wood left. So you put that together, screw that on. That fits into your drill. And while that is spinning, you take your dowel and you stick your dowel into there. And the dowel first goes into that 1/4 inch receiver, which holds it right on center. As you push it further, it engages the drill bit and gives you a perfectly centered hole. And these exit holes allow the sawdust to go off to the side. And you pull it out and you've got a perfectly centered hole. I've got an example here somewhere. And that's the key to having a successful wood hinge, because as you can well imagine, if that hole was to go off center, when you lift up the lid, what's going to happen is it's going to break, because one piece is wanting to go one way, one piece is wanting to go the other way because of the off-centered hole. Now, we just came up with a new Ken, don't I have one here? Yes, I do. We have a new device. This is called a bench hook. And I'm going to go a little farther in the secret of making really good wood hinges. And that secret is to have minimal loss when you're separating or when you're cutting your pieces. So if you were to use it on a table saw, you're going to lose an eighth of an inch kerf. And depending on the grain on the wood, that may really throw it off. So what I prefer to do is I use my joinery crosscut saw, which has a 24 thou kerf. And this is our jig for cutting them perfectly square. So this side is 1/4, this side is for 3/8. And there's left hand and right hand. You put your dowel in there and you sink it right into that groove. And the reason you do that, because there's we would call this a zero clearance insert if it was a table saw, but because of the zero clearance, that means that the wood is well supported. So your saw will just fit down there, light touch, and when you cut it, you don't end up with any tear out on the back side. And now when you put it back together, you've only lost 24 thousandths, and that grain will line right up, and you don't lose anything. Don't forget, and don't use a pen, or at least don't use a pen that has the runny ink in it. Run your line all the way across here before you do this, so that when you line it all up again, everything will match. Now let me just show you real quick the actual drilling. So I would take this, and while that's spinning, Jake,
That's the one.
that's,
The dowel is a little bit bigger.
yeah. So I'm going to, 2 things to show you here. I'm going to have to clamp this in because it's, okay. So there's your perfectly centered hole, but you notice it was a lot of friction. Well, if we take our calipers out, or a micrometer, micrometer, and measure it, that measures 252 thou, and that needs to be 250, so it was just a little bit tight. So I make my own dowel, and I try to get that dowel so it's 249, and at 249 it works absolutely perfectly, because the problem now is, because it forced into there, it burnished it a little bit. And it doesn't show on the backside because that's going to get cleaned off, but when you lift your lid and you see the dowel on the inside, you'll see those little burnished areas. So you got to make perfect dowel. Somewhere in here I have some that I did right. But that's the new, that just went online just this week. That's the new wood hinge. What do we call it? Wood hinge bench hook. Ken makes those. And this is the wood hinge drill jig. And we also provide the dowel, the steel rod if you need it as well. You can get all that stuff. All right. Any more questions come up, Frick?
Yep, we got a quick question from 5-year-old Nora.
Nora.
Who is the
Merry
daughter?
Christmas.
Who is the daughter of Charlie McBride?
Hi, Charlie.
and she wants to know what you put in all of those boxes.
Air.
Your hopes and dreams.
Lots of air. Well, I used to put little, I used to sell them, I used to provide them to the province of New Brunswick, government agencies. And I would make a little pine box about this size. And you would open up and laser engraved. Kevin does laser engraving, check that out. It would be laser engraved in there and it have the province of New Brunswick's logo and whatever else they wanted to say. And in here would be a can of Silver Bay salmon. The company's not in business anymore, but they were a local company that took Atlantic salmon and poached it, and it was delicious. I don't eat that stuff anymore. And then over here would be a container of maple butter. Now, maple butter is maple syrup, it's on our website, that has been processed a little bit further. When I say processed, that just means it's been cooked a little longer, and it turns into this creamy, delicious stuff. Jake, who was a little boy at the time, would get into the inventory, maple butter. And he'd get a stick of wood and he would clean them out. So I'd go to, they were all gone. I couldn't do it anymore. So empty bottles of maple butter and air. I just like making boxes. Most of them are empty though. I don't know what to put in them.
All right, this one, if you can answer quickly before we wrap up.
Yep.
Rob, this comes from Brandon Zane. He's in the chat with us. Rob, do you ever glue up a dovetail box first and then route out the groove for the bottom via a router table?
No, only when I screw up. Always do the groove first. Always do the groove before the assembly. I suppose you could do that, but how are you going to fit the? How are you going to get the lid in? I suppose you could put it in what's the stuff called that they pack things in to keep it frozen for a long time?
Cold, dry ice.
Dry ice. It might shrink the wood enough that you could get it in there in place, and as it warms up, it'll expand. I haven't tried that yet, but I made a beautiful. I only did this once. I made a beautiful little wood hinge box. I still have it somewhere, not a wood hinge box. Beautiful little dovetail box. Perfect. And I put it all together before I realized I'd forgot to put the bottom in. So disappointing. Anyway, don't do that. Okay, so where are we tonight?
For donations?
Do we know our donations?
We'll
You know
get
how
that.
many? Troy. This is too hard to explain, so I'm just going to ignore it. Who is that masked man? Didn't Tommy come in the back door? So what are we doing,
We're
Frick?
at 2,400.
At 2,400. So let's give away so I'm going to give away two cutting boards by Bob, the vintage veteran, and I'm going to give away 2 shave brushes, possibly shave brushes and bowls. I don't know that yet. Don't get too excited. Coming in from Jeff. So if you're ready, Frick, I am.
I am ready, and yeah.
What was our final tally? How many people do we have on tonight?
We have 745 right now.
Okay. Merry Christmas, folks, by the way, before I forget.
All right, here we
Jake's
go.
going away. Jake's going to visit his in-laws for Christmas, so I think this is our last broadcast till after Christmas.
That's right.
So first, and we got to give away, I forgot. Don't forget to check out Moose and all his wares at patssecretgarden.com. Moose always sponsors us. So we're going to give away 3 dead cats or 3 happy sweaters.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes.
3 happy sweaters or 3 dead cats tonight. So let's do that first.
All right, first winner is Bradley Hoskins,
From
Tennessee.
Bradley in Tennessee, brother, you just won yourself a dead cat sweater. Or a happy sweater for your grandchildren or children.
Next winner is Ellie and Stewart in Alberta.
Ellie and Stewart in Alberta. I have lots of in-laws in Alberta. My daughters live there, 3 of them. 2 of them, sorry. They won dead cat sweater. They probably want that. Alberta's cold. But you have your choice. Next.
Next is Dwight Frank in Lancaster, California.
Hey, Dwight, congratulations. Your choice. Tell us what size. Gene will be in touch. Now, the next one is going to be for Bob's drunken cutting board. That's the checkered one. Who's getting that?
That is going to Keith Coe in Sutton, Nebraska.
Hey, Keith, congratulations. Next one will be for, I don't remember which wood it's made out of, but they're beautiful. Jeff's shave brush.
Oh, you're going to alternate?
Yeah.
That one's going to Lena Knight in Canada.
Lena?
Yep. Lena.
Congratulations,
Or
Lena,
Lena.
somewhere in Canada. Next one is going to be Bob's. What's that one? What's he call that one?
Tumbling blocks.
The tumbling blocks. That's the big one. It's inch and a half thick. It's heavy, but it's a really nice cutting board, and the amount of work that goes into it is incredible. Who's that going to, Frick?
That's going to Mike Gwynn in South Carolina.
Hey, Mike, congratulations. And last will be another shave brush from O'Connor Woodworking, Jeff O'Connor. Who's that going to?
That is going to Dora Seeley in Alabama.
Dora or Doris?
Dora.
Dora in Alabama. Congratulations, Dora. You'll love it. Well, you're somebody. I don't know. Do you guys, you have a shave brush for under your arms or something? I don't know.
Legs?
Hard when you have male gifts. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Hopefully we're back on track. We talked about it yesterday. Keeping our fingers crossed so we can run our next class in April. Be nice to everybody. Spread Christmas cheer. Do something wonderful for somebody and don't let them know who did it. Have a lovely holiday season. We'll see you possibly early New Year. Thanks for everyone that come out tonight. See you.